So the steering post and how all of these components generally work, I'm going to talk about that assembly. Also going to talk about the yoke assembly and some of the adjustments that you have here. So one of the things you want to look at is we have what's called a toe lock. This component here, this toe lock piece, is a two-part piece that you want to install because there's a toe lock pin that goes here. When you remove it, you have to have that out for your driver to be able to steer the car. Now, when you're going to scale the car and do the toe on the car, you need to have the toe lock pin in the center position. So there's a hole. Oh, that was not the center position, right? That does not allow the steering wheel to turn. Now, if you force it, it will turn. How do you set this? Well, what you want to do is you want to set the steering wheel at the position where it's most likely to be for the driver when he's at a zero neutral position. When you tow the car, it's actually going to tow the car based on the rear axle position. So the front left and front right toe of the car is going to be set based on the rear axle position. But you want to make sure that the steering wheel, the pitman arm should be straight down here. Some should be straight to the driver. The steering wheel should be positioned where the driver would hold it at a neutral position. And then you want to tighten down the top piece of this toe lock so that it's lined up where you want it to be when you're going to set the toe. Now, with that being said, the way that the toe lock is positioned in here, it does allow some adjustment as well. So what I'm going to do is take this apart so you can see how this functions. I'm going to take out the safety pin, okay, out of the bolt that goes through the yoke and through the toe lock. This is a 1/2 inch nut and a 1/2 inch bolt. So you'll notice that there's also a washer on both sides. So on this side over here as well as that side. So we'll pull this off of here. We'll try to catch the washer. There's the washer. Pull the bolt out. That back together so we don't lose it. Let's talk about this. For now, you can see the toe lock can slide freely up and down on here. The toe lock has 3 positioning holes. You can choose what positioning hole you want based on where your driver's located in the seat. It's not a lot of play, but you'd be surprised at how much of a difference this can make. If it's in the low setting, that's how low it is. If it goes to the high setting, you can see it makes quite a dramatic difference back here at the steering wheel. Now, another nice feature that we offer at Tygo is our Quick Connect, which comes standard on all of our cars, is not welded onto this shaft. It's actually bolted on, which allows you, if anything is damaged on this shaft, you can replace it. On typical mounts, this is welded on here, and anything's damaged here, you can't replace it. You have to replace the whole thing. And so that's just another nice little thing that we have. If I pull this off of here for a second, I want to talk about the yoke. So this is another adjustment that you have. This one's snug down on here. I'm going to loosen it up. This is just a 3/4 inch nut that's on this yoke. This yoke is threaded. Pull it out of here so you can see it. So there's a washer that goes on top of the steering post. The steering post is threaded inside there. There's a bung welded in there. The yoke is threaded, as I've said 100 times. This allows you further adjustment up and down of the positioning of the wheel for your driver. So what you can do is get that threaded in there with the nut on it and the washer, and you can really determine what height you want this to be. So you have 2 adjustments. You have the steering toe lock, these 3 holes, and then you also have how far down inside the steering post you thread the yoke. So with little people, quite often we're going to put this guy almost all the way down, which is what I'm going to do here. I'm going to put it to where you almost can't see threads. And so what I'm going to do is this nut here essentially functions as a jam nut. I'm just gonna put that in there. Not quite snug yet. I can still move it because I want to line up the toe lock. Gonna bring the toe lock up. I'm just gonna put it in the middle hole because that's obviously the middle setting and we don't know who's gonna be driving this car as of yet. So I'm gonna put this back together in the middle hole. Run it through there. So now we're reassembling the steering lock and the yoke. And you'll notice that the pin, I have the bolt in, but the pin's down here. That's going to make it pretty difficult to get the pin in. And also, when your driver removes the pin and lets go, it's going to go down here and get tangled in the steering. We don't want that to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this bolt back out. We're going to make sure that we have this up here on top. I'm going to put it up here, heck, just put it around there if it'll hold it like that. Move the steering lock back up. Get the center hole lined up. And remember, we left the yoke semi-loose so that we could line that up easier. Otherwise, it makes it kind of a booger to line up. Put the washer on. Take this nut. Go ahead. Tighten this guy back up. Once again, snug that up. Get our safety pin through there. Lock it down. Now you can see that this is up here, and when your driver removes this pin, the pin normally sits in the center hole. Can't turn the steering wheel. When they remove it, it'll stay here and not get into the steering. So you always want to make sure that if you ever take this apart, is in that location. So that's the lock and that's the yoke, which remember, we didn't tighten the yoke. So we want to make sure that we go ahead and just snug that down. That's good now. Everything's moving nice and free in the steering. Now, down below, we have the steering post itself. This is a fairly simple thing, but I see a lot of people mess this up sometimes. So the steering post has an Allen bolt that goes through the steering post. It goes through a nub that's welded to the chassis, through the steering post itself, and out the other side. What I want to talk to you about is I'm going to disassemble this. I've already taken the snap pin out of it. I'm going to disassemble this. So we'll pull the nut off of this. And show you how this is actually assembled here so that if you ever have to take this apart, you can make sure that you get it back the correct way. What I often see people do is add an extra washer that actually leaves the steering post very loose inside the nub that's welded to the chassis, and that's not what we want. And so I'm going to pull off the nut right here. I'm going to pull off the washer that's on this side only, and then I'm going to knock out the Allen bolt that's in here. This Allen bolt, by the way, has a 3/16 inch Allen head on it. So if you're looking for the appropriate Allen. So what we have is we have an Allen bolt, has a hole in the end for the safety pin. The steering post itself goes down inside of that. Now, people often ask, well, I need my steering wheel lower and I can't get there with the yoke and I can't get there with the lock. Well, there's absolutely no problem in cutting off the steering post if necessary. This steering post has 2 holes in it, so you can choose which one you want to use. However, if you can't get where you need to go, you can always cut this off and drill a new hole in it. That's going to really bring down this steering column and the steering wheel if you have a super tiny driver. So don't be scared of doing that if it's something you feel is necessary to get your driver comfortable. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about this real briefly, is that you'll notice that this Allen bolt, if I slide it through this side, the head of this Allen bolt will go inside of that hole. Okay? That is intended to function that way. And I will show you why. We're going to put the steering post back down in here. We kind of got to line up our steering lock and all that because we kind of already had all that set. I get all that set, that down in there. Like that. Now, when we put this in here, like I said, the head of this is going to recess in there. And the reason that that is so paramount that go in there like that is because this post needs to be pulled into the side of the welded nub right here. So you cannot, under any circumstances, put a washer on this side. This bolt is intended to go in there and go flush against the steering post itself. You do, however, put a washer on this side. Then we put the nut on this side. And when we tighten it tightens this down and it makes it rigid where it cannot move. If you put a washer over here, it sits and flops like that and it can never truly tighten down. So as you'll see, as I tighten this down, once I have it good and tight, you'll notice that the steering post cannot move at all. Does it tighten down here? Okay, it's starting to snug up. You'll notice now that it's in there, it cannot move. This is firm. It's the way it should be. Remember, no washer there. We're gonna put the safety pin in, and it's good to go. What we often like to do too is if you're concerned about your child or whoever's leg hitting these bolts here, we often will put little rubber caps on here and run the pin right through those, which works really well to keep from rubbing on their legs. Some people like to take foam and they'll even put foam around these so that it can't rub on the kid's leg and sort of rub them raw right there. So not a bad idea.